okay, these scriptures where Paul says we are slaves of the Christ is meaning that basically you're servants. Your whole being is Christ orientated, right? Okay, you're a servant, a slave in that sense, not a slave like, well, you got to live outside in the mud, get booted, get treated badly, you know, all that sort of stuff, chained up, whipped and beaten, all this sort of stuff, as the African American Negroes in that slave trade went through and suffered. He states that Ham and all his descendants were destined to be slaves. He argued that due to the blacks' inferior attributes, they possessed a need to be enslaved. One if he was a believer that they had a smaller skull or something like that, or that sort of rubbish. His book discusses how a black man's physical stature and skin, as opposed to those of a white man, are designed to be more durable and therefore intended for hard manual labour. It's more endurable for the heat in its geographical location. Egypt, parts of Africa, where the sun just beats down on you constantly, their skin evolved. Yeah, it had to evolve so it could handle it, or else they'd get some sort of skin disease. It happens over time, right? Not overnight. Pamphlets and historical profiles. In addition to his books, Priest wrote several pamphlets focusing on heroes of the American Revolution. And they'll all be white, right? His narratives suggest a preoccupation with racial conflicts, since they focused mainly on soldiers who had been held in captivity by Native Americans, or the Indians. Right? Frank H. Severance, 1856 to 1931, a noted author-historian, defended Priest's style of writing, saying, "I'm aware that Priest is not altogether trustworthy as a historian, yet he concedes to his works a large amount of historic material, obtained at some pains from sources more or less authentic. Priest is least trustworthy in his more ambitious work, whereas his unpretentious pamphlets contain true narratives of individual undertakings in the Revolution, Indian captivities, and other pioneer experiences gathered by the writer direct from the hero whose adventures he wrote down without literary skill." So he wasn't a natural writer, was he? He wasn't a great writer, really. But also without apparent perversion or exaggeration. Priest recorded stories of Native American atrocities against white settlers that otherwise may have been forgotten. Well, they were trying to steal their land, drive them out, all that sort of stuff. These American Indians could see a threat, what they were going to do. Hunt the buffalo, kill all the buffalo, wipe it out, and the Indians can't eat, etc. They were quite onto it, quite aware of it. So these people did these atrocities against them. The army, 7th Cavalry, all that sort of military force, right? Custer and the 7th Cavalry, etc. Priest recorded stories of Native American atrocities against white settlers that otherwise may have been forgotten. They're just trying to protect their land. But they killed these farmsteaders, all this sort of stuff. It could have been someone else could have gone and wiped them out to take their land off them, to steal their land from under them. But I've got to blame these guys, right? They may have done it, but they're doing it for a specific reason, to protect their land, their buffalo, etc. That they saw that these people were wiping out in great numbers. However, his selection of stories was biased towards portrayals of Native Americans as violent. So he was probably exaggerating because he had a bias. He was racist, something like that. Criticisms and legacy. Critics dismissed Priest's books as compilations of poorly supported theories motivated by racism. Robert Silverberg, sounds very Jewish, an American author and editor best known for writing science fiction. He's a multiple winner of both Hugo and Nebula Awards, a member of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Hall of Fame, and a Grand Master of San Francisco. Priest was known for integrating many types of sources into his writings, seeking to create a semblance of authority and credibility for a popular audience. Priest's fantastic assertion persists today in the works of pseudoscience, it's half-assed science, pseudohistory, half-assed history, and New Age pop culture. A range of spiritual or religious practices and beliefs which rapidly grew in Western societies during the early 1970s. Its highly eclectic and unsystematic structure makes a precise definition difficult, even though many scholars consider it a religion. Isn't it strange how in those prior centuries these Europeans had these biases, these racisms against these natives, whether they were black or light brown or red skin or whatever, and yet centuries later they're the ones trying to get into their religions. Hinduism, Buddhism, Zen, all this sort of stuff, right? Hebrew Israelite, all that sort of stuff. Trying to get into that. It's kind of weird. It's probably just different these days. You know, it's more modern and they're just drawn to that. They have no bias, no prejudice. They just like the idea of it. That's probably what it comes down to. Priest was known for integrating many types of sources into his writings, seeking to create a semblance of authority and credibility for a popular audience. Priest's fantastic assertions persist today in the works of pseudoscience, pseudohistory, and New Age pop culture. So it's in their religions that they've entered into, maybe. In this respect, he can be considered a pioneer in popular but highly erroneous publishing. So he's a great figurehead for BS publishing writings. That's what it's saying there. The popularity of his works allowed Americans of his time to indulge in romantic fantasies about the past that encouraged their own racism. So it made it justifiable. Yeah? He boosted it. He said, yeah, that's right. You're right. Think like that. That's good. Every reason to think like that. This justifies it. And so forth. So let's have a look at this book. We notice this. A subscription record from 1840. And it says, the abolitionists should have been hanged and quartered. We're going to make it bigger so you can see it. Reverend George Langdon of North Carolina in 1836 wrote to the editor of Zion Watchman. That's the original Jehovah's Witness publication, right? An anti-slavery publication. I, sir, would as soon be found in the ranks of the banditti as numbered with Arthur Tappan and his wanton coadjutors. Nothing is more appalling to my feelings as a man, contrary to my principles as a Christian, and repugnant to my soul as a minister, than the insidious proceedings of such men, abolitionists. August G.A. Chronicle. He, maybe that's a person's name, Amos Dresser, should be hung as high as heaven to rot on the gibbet until the wind whistled through his bones. The cry of the whole South should be death, instant death to the abolitionist wherever he is caught. Wow, that's an ancient publication. Very old. 1840. Someone's views against abolitionists. Let's make it bigger so you can read along with us. And maybe that's him there, or some sort of European. And then these are the, looks like a Mongol, African, and Native American. The four representations of mankind. Okay, European, it looks like Asian or mongrel, not mongrel, Mongol, African, and Native American. Bible defense of slavery, or the origin, history, and fortunes of the Negro race, as deduced from history, both sacred and profane, three natural relations, moral, mental, and physical, to the other races of mankind contained, compared and illustrated their future destiny, predicted, etc. by Josiah Priest AM, author of American Antiquities and member of the Antiquarian Society of New York. A plan of national colonization, to which is added a plan of natural colonization. Adequate, make it bigger so you can see it, and all that may hereafter become free. Okay. A plan of national colonization adequate to the entire removal of the free blacks and all that man hereafter became free in a manner harmonizing with the peace and well-being of both races. By Reverend W. S. Brown, MD of Glasgow, Kentucky. 6th Stereotype Edition. A plan of national colonization adequate to the entire removal of the free blacks and all that may hereafter become free in a manner harmonizing with the peace and well-being of both races, by Reverend W. S. Brown, MD of Glasgow, Kentucky. Resize this so you can see. Entered according to Act of Congress on the 24th of February 1851 by Reverend W. S. Brown, MD, in the Clerk's Office of the United States District of Kentucky. So, it's Library of Congress was entered into that. Publisher's preface. In presenting the following work to the American public, no apologies are offered. We live under a government which tolerates liberty of thought and freedom of the press, and in this expression of our honest views and feelings upon a subject relating to the general welfare of the country, we are but exercising a right which belongs to every American citizen. Observation and experience has taught us that no man's opinions and principles gain favour with the world by empty apologies and useless excuses, but that they are generally received or rejected as they should be, according as they possess merit or demerit. It is a pleasing reflection that the age of prescription for opinion's sake is past. We trust never again to return, and that the unrestricted interchange of thought and sentiment which is permitted by the liberal genius of our free institutions has been productive of the most glorious results, as the rapid spread of civilization and Christianity, the general diffusion of light and knowledge, and the wonderful developments and triumphs of science and art in this our day and generation clearly demonstrate. Let the work progress. Let the little stone cut from the mountain's brow continue to roll onward, gathering strength with its progress. The result will be the full development of the illimitable powers of the human mind, and a final consummation of all the glorious events contemplated in the redemption of the world. The question is, slavery as it exists in the United States justifiable? Is one which at least admits of discussion. If it be in harmony with the immutable principles of truth and justice, and not a crime against humanity and a libel upon our holy religion, let it be so understood and practiced by our honest citizens, whose highest ambition consists in faithfully serving God and living in obedience to the laws of the country. If not, let the converse be established, and some judicious and practicable system of emancipation or liberation or freedom and removal be provided, and we maintain without the fear of successful refutation that a majority of the enlightened slaveholders of the United States, with characteristic promptitude and Christian philanthropy, will liberate their slaves, or free them, let them go, release them, right, and contribute to their removal and future support and protection. So they say, okay, now you're free, you're liberated, you can go, do whatever, move on, and we'll give you support and protection. All that is wanted in the final adjustment of this vexed question is light and knowledge, a fair and candid interchange of thoughts and opinions, a faithful and true exposition of the principles involved in the relation of master and slave. Convince the slaveholder that this relation is compatible with Christianity and republicanism. He stands ready to abandon it, regardless of the sacrifice. His mind is not sealed against the impressive teaching of truth and reason, nor his heart seared against the moving influences of pure benevolence and true Christian charity. But hitherto, the agitation of this question has been altogether one-sided and confined, mainly to those in whose action upon the subject neither right, reason, nor justice were involved. They have been justly regarded as busybodies and disturbers of the public peace. The question, like the institution itself, is purely of a sectional or local character, involving only the interests of the citizens of those states where slavery exists. So, it's all about them. Them and their money making from their backs, their hard labour, even under those harsh conditions that they put them through, and their profits. It's all about them. Cheap labour to make them wealthy. For it to be discussed and agitated in the motives and characters of the slaveholder, to be assailed and calumniated by the citizens of other states as illiberal and anti-republican, and savours of ignorance and corruption, or of both combined. But nevertheless, this unnatural warfare against truth and justice, against law and liberty, has been continued until the peace and prosperity of a great nation are much disturbed, and our glorious confederacy well nigh dissolved, until many of our best citizens and purest patriots have begun almost to call in question the honesty of the honoured dead, the fathers of the Republic, and to look with distrust and suspicion upon those time-honoured institutions which have commanded the world's admiration, and by which are secured to as the richest blessings of civil and religious liberty. It is not time then that the South should begin to defend herself against the aggressions of those time-serving votaries of error and fanaticism, and show to the world that her peculiar policy and institutions are in harmony with the genius of republicanism and the spirit of true Christianity. Believing that such is her true policy, and that this proposition is much more consistent and reasonable, as well as more easily established than its converse, we have been induced to give publicity to the following pages in vindication of Southern rights and institutions. Although we believe that the institution of slavery received the sanction of the Almighty in the patriarchal age, that would be in Noahic age, that it was incorporated into the only national constitution which ever emanated from God, or came from God, originated from God, that its legality was recognised and its reliable duties regulated by our Saviour. So Jesus promoted that. That's what they're saying, when upon the earth. That it was established in wisdom. He's promulgating, or he's saying that Jesus said, yeah, it's all good. You can have slaves, you can beat them, you can mistreat them for your profit, or that sort of stuff. No. That it was established in wisdom and has been wisely continued through all ages and handed down to us in mercy. See, what they're trying to base it on is Jesus saying, slaves, honour your masters, obey your masters, all that sort of stuff, right? If you happen to be a slave, okay, or a servant of, that's probably what he's talking about, that the relation of master and servant harmonise strictly with the best interests of the inferior or African race in particular, in securing to him that protection and support which he is native imbecility, or he's got no, or low intelligence of intellect, disqualifies him from securing for himself. Yet do we most cordially reprobate any abuse of the relation by the superior power, or that superior race, right? Them being the superior authority, or any, or maybe it's talking about God, undue exercise of authority by the matter over the slave, holding it to be an unwavering, uncompromising truth that a fearful retribution is in reservation for all the violators of the wisely established decrees of God in this respect. There are certain obligations and duties which every master owes to a slave that are as binding and indispensable as are the duties and obligations which he owes to his God, his country, or himself. So they're saying, yeah, okay, there's rights and wrongs, how you treat your slaves, etc. You should be doing this according to the Bible, according to God, all that sort of stuff. But they had people that beat them, mistreated them, treated them like dirt, etc., etc. So they weren't following those rules, were they? These obligations. These discharged in accordance with the will of high heaven, and the mere fact of being a slaveholder will not, in our humble judgment, debar a man from an entrance into the house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. So saying that, well, it's not going to stop them from getting into the kingdom of heaven, because they had these slaves and they did all those things to them, right? Okay. They're totally twisting what the scripture says about the difference between servants, Jewish servants, those who owed a debt and were employed. They worked and paid off their debt with someone else's debt, but they had luxury, they had clothing, they had beds to sleep in, they had a roof over their head, they had food, they had drink, etc., etc. Was the foreign, non-Jewish, Gentile, Goyim, who was captured through war, perhaps, was a slave and had basically no rights. There's a difference there. Again, check out the scriptures. Read it properly. Our individual views on the subject of a national system of colonization as applicable to the free black population of the United States may be regarded at first sight perhaps as somewhat novel, something new, etc., and wanting in the essential qualities of age and precedent or experience. But the reader may rest assured. So it's a new thing, and you've got to go through trial and error and all this sort of stuff. Perhaps as somewhat novel and wanting in the essential qualities of age and precedent or experience, but the reader may be rest assured that there have been submitted to the inspection of many of our prominent citizens and leading statesmen and have received their unqualified approval. So these guys come out and check it out and they say, yeah, okay, this person seems to be okay, you're treating them okay, they're doing fine, there's nothing funny going on, yeah, okay, or yeah, okay, we approve of whatever you're doing. Yeah, we've got no problem there. Carry on. Without exception. The existence of free blacks in any community, whether free or slave, is universally admitted to be an evil of no minor consideration. Their removal, therefore, is a matter deeply affecting the interest and well-being of both races. Their present number and natural increase places this beyond the reach of individual enterprise. The resources of the general government must, therefore, be brought into requisition in the removal of this as well as any other evil of a general or national character. However this may be done in this case in a manner harmonising with the true interests of both races is a theme certainly not unworthy the candid consideration of any American citizen. In the work of Mr. Priest on the subject of slavery as it relates to the Negro or African race, examined in light of circumstances, history and the Holy Scriptures, with an account of the black man's colour, causes of stats of servitude and traces of his character, as well in ancient as in modern times, with scriptures on abolitionism, the reader may confidently expect to find a work of great research and ability, one of deep interest, and well worthy his candid perusal. The author has sought in the oracles of God, in authentic history, and in the analogies of nature, the key to the mystery of the degradation through the unchronicled ages of the past of the Negro race. The fact of the inferiority and consequent subordination of the black race to the white, being in accordance with the will of the supreme ruler, or God, the Godhead of the universe, is not like a mathematical problem susceptible of absolute demonstration. Yet we think that the readers of this work will acknowledge that the author has let in a flood of light upon this deeply interesting subject through the mists in which ignorance and misguided sympathy has enveloped it. Himself a northern man, prejudiced as he admits in his early education against the institution, the conclusion at which he arrives, supported as they are by the most powerful train of reasoning, cannot fail to check the suicidal progress of that pseudo-philanthropy. So it's half-assed philanthropy. Wycliffe modern Abolitionism. Is that supposed to be? Well, that's a strange word. Preface. Then, a knowledge of the races and nations of man who have peopled the globe since it was created, there can be no subject more interesting. With a view to an elucidation of this description, we present the work before us, or this particular author does, in which an attempt is made to give, in some measure, a history of the origin, character, and fortunes of the Negro portion of mankind. In pursuit of this object, we hope there needs no apology, because we have found it necessary to resort to the Holy Scriptures for much important information which relates to our design, as it is well known that these parts of that book, which were written by Moses, are the eldest writings of the human race now extant, and relate to the very first operation of the human race after the flood. So this person is saying that Moses wrote the scriptures, Exodus, Deuteronomy, etc., when Jews admit that no, he didn't write it, it's attributed to him because it's their traditional, or their tradition, or their custom to add a name to any of these writings, these scrolls, etc. So they attribute it to Moses. How can Moses write of his death after he's dead? Go figure that one out. As corroboratory of the development of that miraculous book, we have also resorted to ancient and modern history, to travels, narratives, and which go to aid us in the research. So they've gone all over to seek approval, probably, for their slave trade, to having slaves, and what they were doing, and how they're profiting from it. As to the origin of the Negro man, we have in our cognitions, we collected several curious opinions relative to the subject, which we have thought proper to present on account of their wild and extravagant character as follows. So they've come across other people that have that opinion, about the Negroes. Some have queried whether the mother of the first Negro man might not have been frightened by some hideous black monster of the antediluvian woods, as in the first ages of the world there were many terrible beasts of the wilderness roaming about whose races are now extinct. We actually read another book where Eve wasn't tempted by a servant, she was tempted by a first black race. They'd done something, they'd fallen away from God, right, out of God's presence, and God had told her and Adam, don't touch that tree, or don't take the fruit off that tree and eat it, etc., etc. But this supposed tempter came along and said, didn't Adam say that? Don't touch the tree? God didn't actually say that? Isn't that what, that's what your husband Adam said? She said, oh yeah, he said, yeah, don't touch the tree. So this being touches this tree, she says, see, look at that. Nothing happened. A bit like George Carlin, right? Strike me dead, God, if you're real, zap me, and it never happened. See, there's no God. Okay, so this basically touches a tree, and nothing happens. So he says, oh, okay. So she touches a tree, and that's that sin she's committed, right? And then he gets her to take the fruit and eat the fruit, and then she passes it on to Adam. That sort of thing. Just as a different version. Okay, trying to blame the darker race people. Okay, tempters made that Eve and Adam sin with this stuff rather than the servant. Try to blame it on them.